All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here for our final class on the basic ideas of science of mind. So we're going to have a great class tonight. We're going to share some wonderful ideas, and it's time to start. And we always start with the spiritual mind treatment. And I think last week, did you come up here and do the treatment, Tim? No, I think Michelle did it. I think you did our opening treatment. That was lovely. Who wants to do it tonight? Which of our practitioners would like to do an opening treatment for us? 2001, 2002. There you go, sir.
Yes. So in this moment, this very special moment of peace, love, and joy, we come together to share. We come together to learn. We come together to be with the absolute oneness in which we all are. For there is only that one perfect place, that one perfect being, that one perfect feeling, that one perfect everything that there is. We call it allness, we call it the perfection of life. It is here, it is in each and every one of us. And I know this to be the truth. And I know as we share tonight, as this class goes, that our teacher, John Waterhouse, is blessed. He brings us the word and from his heart. And we know that this is all good. It is all perfect. And I'm so grateful for this time. I'm grateful for this place. And I know that each one of us holds that in truth in within. So I release this into the law of mind, knowing that all is well. And together we say,
and so it is. Thank you, sir. Well done. So tonight we're going to do the last 4 chapters of the book, which are the personality of value, finding life's riches, spiritual growth, and better living now. But before we do that, let's talk about the assignment I sent you home with, the hidden belief exercise, which I'm sure all of you did, right? Okay, good. So,
I did. I forgot.
well, you forgot to do it, or you forgot to bring it down?
I forgot to do it.
Oh, okay. Well. So I don't want to spend too much time on something you didn't do, but I do know that some people did. So who has a thought they would like to share about their experience of going through the hidden belief exercise, which was a series of questions about different areas of belief, and to give you a chance to talk about something that you learned through that exercise. Anyone want to talk about that? Tim.
maybe I'll hold the mic right up.
Just like that.
Just like that, okay. I was writing down some things that I remember as a young kid, but I guess the thing that has come to me is that how I recognize those and I moved through them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that they were a truth that I grew up with, but now that I'm way past that, they're no longer a truth. They were just somebody else's opinion. So I moved through them, and I've kept very few of them, or I've done it with a little twist. That there was always caveats. Yeah, I got to be careful about this, but at the same time, I'm more aware of my life and of the impact and how everybody else fits into it. So I'm more open to a lot of things than I was, just because that's the way I was taught.
Right. Some people would say that any belief you have is a limiting belief. That virtually everything has some way of protecting you or restricting you or restricting your perception of the world, that most things that we think about have some level of restriction. And so they are our beliefs, they seem to work, they maybe have worked really well in the past, and now we have some conflict, and we don't, because those things are buried in our subjective mind, we don't even know that that's what's causing this problem in our life. But the formula for working that out is, if something's not working in your life, look and see how that is being impacted, because it's not coming from the world outside of you, it's coming from you and your consciousness. It's in there somewhere. And it may not be a standard thing that you think on a regular basis. You may not have thought about it for 20 years. But if you've got an issue in your life, something that where you're being limited or you're being challenged, something is attached to a belief. somewhere in your subjective mind. So the work is to find that thing and kind of burrow it out and get rid of it. Now, you don't have to. Any good metaphysician will tell you that you don't have to go and dig all these out, that you really should spend your time focusing on what you believe now and what's working, and doing more of that, and that will override those old beliefs. That it's kind of an interesting thing to go after them too. Do a little hunting down of things that are still in your subjective mind, things that your parents or your teachers or your siblings or your first or second or even third partner placed presented to you as a seed, and you bought it, and you said, okay, that's the truth, that I believe. And that may have worked in that moment, it may have been perfect in that moment to get you through something. But chances are, because most beliefs are limiting beliefs, it comes to a point where it's working against you. Anybody else have another thought about this thing? Yes! Michelle has a thought over here.
A belief that I thought I didn't have anymore came up yesterday in the workshop that we did.
Uh-huh. Oh, good place to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believed that I couldn't because I was a girl, because I've heard that my entire childhood.
Sure.
And even though I have decided that I don't believe that anymore, I noticed that I did.
Good for you. That's brilliant. Congratulations. Because you can't change a belief when it's hidden. You just can't do it. But if you're clear about that, that's your work, is to recognize that you can do things better because you're a girl. You don't play with it that way. Build it up.
Well,
You know?
I feel like it doesn't matter what gender you are, it's all that domestication that makes you think.
Right, because what I just said creates a limitation in how you would see men.
Yes.
Good for you. And you don't need that either, do you?
No, I do not.
See how, even though it looks like a good idea, still got a limiting angle to it? Amazing how that works. Good for you. Gender doesn't matter. Excellent. Who else? Anybody else have a thought on this? Oh, they're working you there.
Okay, I put a lot of thought into this. I don't know if this is limiting me or not, and I can't really blame my 93-year-old mother, but when I was a kid, I would always complain, life is just, that's not fair. And she would say to me, life is not fair. And I think I absorbed that. I mean, and my example is that good stuff happens to bad people, and bad stuff happens to good people. But anyway, that's a childhood belief that was instilled in me. I don't know if it's limiting or not.
Brilliant. You know, and I think you can see that thinking things are unfair is a limitation. But my angle with life is unfair is yes, because life is not about fairness. You know, that was never the deal. Whoever said that that it was all gonna be fair? It's all based in consciousness. You know, the perfection of life is that that the law takes what's in our belief system, in our consciousness, and turns it into our experience in life. That's the perfection. Is it fair? Probably not. By whose standard would fairness even be begun to be approached? So if that's an elusive one, but good for you to see that's not going to help you. And if ever you think that you're being treated unfairly, now you're the victim. So, you know, what a way to dig yourself a hole, so congratulations. Yes, ma'am.
I've been working on these issues for a while because another teacher that I'm following is talking about those underlying beliefs. And he had a process to deal with it, but I couldn't do it by myself, and I never found anybody to do it with me. So, you were talking about digging stuff up. Well, I spent many a year digging stuff up and hated every minute of it. All the crying and the screaming and the being mad and the being upset and blah, blah, blah. And so when I went through gratitude training back in 2016, I came out saying, never again. Never again. I am following joy and happiness, and that's it. Never digging up stuff again. And I found that because that's what I'm focusing on and that's what I'm spending my time practicing, is that it just percolates up when I'm ready to receive it, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I can see how I made that happen. oh, I can, and it always brought it back to me. Always brought it back to me knowing that.
Without blame, though.
Exactly.
Just realizing that's just so,
It made me to where I was able to let go of all that blame
That's
to everybody
lovely.
else. It was amazing,
That's
and
lovely.
I didn't have to go dig it up.
Congratulations, well said. Beautiful, excellent. Yes,
I'd like to hear what other people have said love is, and then I have a couple things I'd like to read. They're sort of short,
go ahead and read them.
okay? The first one is I should read the first one the first one is out of the Bible. You know, 1 Corinthians 13
I've heard of it.
is a chapter on love, and it says, love is patient and kind, never jealous or envious, never boastful or, can't read my own writing, or proud, never haughty or selfish or rude. Love does not demand its own way. It is not irritable or touchy. It does not hold grudges and will hardly ever notice when others do it wrong. It is never glad about injustice, but rejoices whenever truth wins out. If you love someone, you will be loyal to him no matter what the cost. You will always believe in him, always expect the best of him, and always stand your ground in defending him. There are three things that remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love.
And some might say that the Apostle Paul was a bit codependent.
I didn't hear you. Say it again.
I said that some believe that the Apostle Paul was a bit codependent. Because some of those things,
Codependent.
defending somebody to the end, it's not our job to defend one another, it's our job to love. To know that, to be aware of love.
Okay, and I don't know how this had turned out, but it did. It was an affirmation that I've had from the past, and
Okay.
it's metaphysical. I live in a world created by love.
Huh.
Love
Is what I am.
Love is, you know.
In all that I
say it
think and
with
say
me.
and do, love is what I am. Before me, behind me, around me, inside me, love is what I am. I'm filled, overflowing, and clear in my knowing. Love is what I am. And so it is.
And so it is. And John Waterhouse wrote that.
Oh my goodness. It didn't have your name on it.
Well, thanks for thinking that's worth reading.
But I
One of my favorites.
All right, so I don't know that we have time to go into a conversation about love, but I guarantee you, keep coming to class and we'll get there and we'll have a grand conversation on that, okay? Thank you, Margaret. Okay, anybody else on the exercise? Okay, last one.
Well, of the 7 topics, the one I did not see was what your hidden beliefs about religion. So I was kind of exploring that in my mind.
Oh, that's interesting, good for
You know,
you.
as I came into or discovered the New Thought movement, going back to what were my beliefs before that, coming from more fundamental types of churches, and which of those hidden beliefs are still there as I explore the New Thought movement.
Good for you, that's great. I grew up in the Baptist church and I could go to a temple, I could go to a mosque, I could go to the Catholic church and hear a lesson that would feed me. And I would go to the Baptist church and I would just sit there and disagree with everything they said. I had to clean that up because I was being unreasonable. I mean, God's in the Baptist church too, you know? So anytime we close ourselves off like that, I'm really glad you brought that up. That's great. The idea that somehow somebody is wrong in where they are just limits us. It doesn't affect them at all. Good, that's fantastic. All right, that was a quick discussion about that. You ready to get into our last 4 chapters?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to start with the personality of value. Let's see where we're going. Turn this on. There we go. Oh, maybe. Maybe I should plug it in. This will only take a moment. And now, there we go. We did our hidden beliefs exercise, chapter 7, the personality value. What I've done is I've extrapolated the quotes from Holmes that seem most poignant to me, And those are the ones we're going to focus on tonight. So here we go. Personality is the way people express their individuality. Nothing controversial there. He's just setting stage for how personality impacts our experience. So here's the big statement about personality. Personality is comprised of the characteristics one displays, the degree to which one has developed certain traits and qualities, and the way in which one shows them in their life. Appearance, speech, actions, attitudes, and the way one appears to the rest of the world. Still, nothing controversial, just kind of creating a foundation for where we're going. The more you come to realize your true spiritual nature, the more you will be able to let it flow through you and express as your personality. I could not agree with that statement more than that. The idea of recognizing and realizing your spiritual nature. What does that mean? You know, it says in the Christian Bible that we were created in the image and likeness of God. Frankly, I think that we created our image of a deity in the image and likeness of human beings.
Yeah.
You know, but the truth is that there is a spiritual nature. It's someone who is grounded in understanding that the presence of the divine is everywhere and always, including in ourselves. And when we get that, when we realize there's no separation from us and the divine, it impacts our ability to see who we are. And I gotta say, that's one of the biggest challenges people have in this teaching. They're good with saying God is all there is. They're good with knowing that there is one infinite presence in the universe. Love that. That's great. That's good stuff. And that is what you are. No. I can't be that. I've screwed up too many times. I've done too many things wrong. I've struggled with life too much. How could the divine possibly be at the point of me? But the truth is the divine is working perfectly right at the point of view. Thomas Troward, one of Holmes' teachers, actually said that the infinite exists in its entirety at every point. Whoa, that means all of God is right where you are. That is what you are. It is who you are. And that the ability to create in your life and the ability for the divine to create the cosmos is all the same. It's just a matter of scale. It's all the same. And that when we recognize that, what comes with that is some responsibility. You got to take responsibility for the conditions in your life because you're creating them. You're the only one that can create them in your life. Oh, no, people do things to me. They hurt me. No, they don't. They do things. You interpret what they did, and you take on a sense of hurt. But that's not true. That's twisted. The truth is that we are the cosmic creator of our entire lives. Everything that's said to us, everything we see, everything we read, everything we hear about is only there because we are open to receive it. And we are actually creating that experience. So we take in the raw data of life and we give it meaning. And the question that I often ask people is, what are you making this mean? You know, and if there was some kind of an event that happened right here in front of everybody, and then I individually surveyed everybody in the room, your experience of that event would be different. Because it's going through your filters, your lenses, to come out as of something that you can recall and experience. And all those things add up over time. They're filled with those limited hidden beliefs too. You know, those are all filters. So the way you would be impacted by an event that happened right here and somebody else in the room would be very different. And this has been proven over and over again, especially in cases like where there was an accident and there were witnesses. And then the police go around to each person and take a statement of what they saw, and they don't line up. Because people have differences of opinion. You know, some people think it was this person's fault, and other people say it's that person's fault. And then there are those that go, it just happened. It didn't look like anybody made a mistake. Who knows? You know, it just depends on how we perceive things and how we take them in. And all of that just supports that continuing development of our perception of life. So that we're constantly building on our perception of life. And as we do, and impressing that upon the law of the spiritual law, what's coming back to is confirmation that what we're claiming is so. Even though others don't have that same perception. It's the same thing. So it's our job to be as clear as we can. You know, I don't know that, for me the word reality is an individual thing and it's subjective. Because we all have different ways of seeing things and making them real in our understanding. So to say there is some kind of top level reality, maybe there is, but I don't know that any of us are knowing it right now. We're knowing what we've experienced in life. We're doing the best we can to understand the events and conditions that we experience and have them fit into something that we can call our consciousness. It does not match everybody else. It's our consciousness. So never expect, in fact, that's one reason I wonder how any two individuals can possibly be in a sustaining relationship when they've come from different places, different times, different relationships, different everything, to come into this thing called a relationship. How does that work? How do they reconcile all of those differences? Maybe the answer is love. Maybe it is. But the truth is that we're in charge. And that the more we can realize that we are the presence of the divine, at least from the perspective of the science of mind and a metaphysical perception, if we can really embrace and embody that idea that the divine dwells at the point of me, our personality will reflect that. Because we will not be looking to make other people wrong. We will not see ourselves as victims. You can't play both of those games at the same time. So whatever our perception is of a true spiritual nature, it's got to be better than the alternative. So that's, I think, what Holmes is getting to in this particular quote. So in the book, he talks about 4 aspects of personality. He begins with how our social being is impacts our lives. And he says that may be the most important trait that you can have, is a spiritually based social personality type. So what that means to him was getting along with others. I mean, really going out of your way to get along with people and really taking time not to be in judgment of them so that you can continue your relationship with them. And that doesn't mean putting up with stuff that you just don't want to put up with. You know, I'm not suggesting that you should allow people to abuse you or insult you or in any way violate you physically or otherwise. But beyond that, go out of your way to try to get the relationship to work. Barbara and I had a thing early years ago in this center where there were some people that just pushed my buttons, and Barbara would say, "I'll take them." And then there were people that pushed her buttons. I'd go, "I'll take them," and they kind of became ours, and that helped us get through that to the point where those buttons getting pushed stopped. I remember once, I used to do men's gatherings. We would do all kinds of crazy things, go up on the mountain. It was good stuff though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a guy that came here, in fact came to class all the time, that would ask the dumbest questions and just annoy the hell out of me. And I found myself speaking down to him. He came to one of those gatherings and he talked about his life, about how he lost his family when he was very young, how he went from foster home to foster home. Cracked my heart wide open. When we came back to the center after that weekend, I never saw him the same way. I gave him all kinds of space to be who he was. He didn't change, but it didn't bother me anymore because I understood, So there's work to do around that to create relationships. Having friends is gratifying, Holmes says. It is. And, I'm one of those people that holds friendship as a high, lofty concept. I don't believe in having tons of friends, because you really can't manage relationships at that intimate level of friendship with 100 people. But yet at the same time, to have friendships that are intimate and close, or even to have acquaintances of people that you can say you like, is so helpful in life. So Holmes is suggesting that we focus on having quality friendships in our lives. He says the secret to progress and abundance, or the secret to having a social personality works, creates progress and abundance in your life. and that it increases useful self-expression. So those are all just ideas he threw out as to how personality is important at the level of social. But he's making the point, and he will on the other three as well, that that to have a personality that is highly functioning improves your life, you know, rather than being curmudgeonly and finding fault in things. So let's see what he says beyond that. He says physical health. He says that a healthy mind creates a healthy body. He says that accepting the perfection of the indwelling God guarantees us that we'll have the physical expression that we want to in life. Now, how does that work with someone who we know has an incredible sense of the divine within themselves? Like, for example, Ram Dass. I was with Ram Dass and saw who that being was, and the great work that he could do, and the way he could touch hearts and fill the room with the sense of joy that was extraordinary. He had a stroke, and he lived out the rest of his life with the limitations that a stroke causes. Did that make him any less of a divine being? No, that was just his path. So when Holmes or anybody goes into this thing, I've just in the past few years really gotten this idea that we don't judge people for their physical challenges, ever. We don't find them less conscious or less developed spiritually. That's just not true. But at the same time, there are things about our bodies that it really does help to have a clear mind about. And that's just where I see that. So, any thoughts on either of these first two, the social or the physical health? Anybody want to say anything about those? Then we go to number 3, which is financial success. Holmes says a godlike personality holds the secret of abundance. What could that possibly mean? Well, you could suggest that God is rich. And if God is rich, so are you.
He's got a lot of property.
That's
It doesn't know what's
He's got a lot of family.
So whatever that means, I think what it's saying is that if we are using the attributes of God as the foundation of our personality, then we're going to live an abundant life. Can anyone rattle off the 7 attributes of God that we always rely on?
Peace, power, beauty, joy, love, life.
Try that again.
Peace, power, beauty, love, joy, love, light, and wisdom.
Yeah, and love, you put love in there twice.
I did.
That's all right, that's all right.
All right, peace, power, beauty, joy, love, light, and wisdom.
That's them, that's the 7.
Creativity, is creativity.
I think you could find almost anything in that.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually Holmes, later in this chapter, I think I've got a quote where he says that an attribute of God is our creative ability. So, you can add that one too.
That's part of the abundance is you always.
One would think,
you're
right?
always gonna- Yeah.
Okay, well, you're not supposed to talk without the mic.
Oh.
You want to say something? He does. Good.
So yeah, I think a part of abundance is you're creating something, a service or a good or, and yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna be more.
Good. And so the other bullet here is being agreeable, kindly, considerate, and tolerant meets little or no opposition. Agreeable, kindly, considerate, and tolerant meets little or no opposition. I think that's reasonable. But I always want to warn people at this time, that doesn't make you a doormat. That doesn't mean people get to take advantage of you. It just means that you're not going to get hooked. You're not gonna see someone acting out and suddenly go into this major judgment of them. You're going to say, give them their space, they're doing their thing, and not get hooked. That's important. If they try to hook you, you know how not to do it. You just won't play that game. So I think those are the points that he's making there. And the final one is spiritual. He says constantly striving to reproduce high spiritual qualities. Go back to the attributes of God. And that this grows one's ability to reflect those attributes. So those are the 4 things that he says are based on where personality plays a role in us having the life that we want to have. And I think he makes good points. Any other thoughts on any of that? All right, where are we going? As a result of social, physical, financial, and spiritual well-being, happiness is assured. It isn't that the bottom line. We want to be happy. I have not found many people that don't want to be happy. And when I have, I just bless them and keep going. So he's saying this is the way, and these are the 4 areas as far as personality goes. Then he has this thing about the type of personality that pays. And these are his 3 points. 1, expressing God's qualities which lie inherent within you. It says in you. Same thing. The idea that those that we have been talking about here are already there. You don't have to go find them. You don't have to teach yourself to, or train yourself to practice them. They're already there. All you have to do is be aware of them. And that if you are aware of them and you consciously accept that that which is God is also an attribute of you, then they work. You know, first one is peace. Now, for some people, you might notice peace doesn't come all that naturally. But when you recognize that it's a natural tendency for human beings to be peaceful, and this has been proven over and over again. Statisticians can look at the human experience on planet Earth. There's a guy up at Harvard that has done that kind of thing, where he's researched violence. And he said most of the people on the planet are peaceful. So it shouldn't be that hard for us to be peaceful, especially when we live in a country which offers such opportunities to us to express ourselves openly without fear of retribution from a government or other people. So having those qualities is certainly something that we can use and something that will pay off in how we're using personality. Number 2, others like having you around. He said this a couple of times in this chapter, that it's a real advantage if people like you. Who was it, Smiley on Saturday Night Live? And gosh, people like you. You know, it was a goofy thing, but it's true. If people like you, you have the opportunity to have a closer relationship with them. If people like you, they'll come help you when you gotta move. You know, they'll show up if you're in need. You know, and then because they know you'd do that for them. Because people like you. Nothing wrong with being liked. Nothing wrong with being liked. 3, an opportunity to experience more abundance, including money. He's saying that your personality gives you the opportunity to experience more abundance in your life. And it kind of attaches to the one above it. In fact, both of them, they all kind of fit together. That people who are living from that higher understanding of the divine in their own lives, people who are open-hearted to other people, tend to do well. You know, they tend to close sales. They tend to find a lot of people that want their services. You know, they're somehow in a better position to get where they want to go than people who have a different kind of personality. So don't underestimate the importance of personality. And that was the whole point of this first chapter. Yes. This is in the book. And I tell you, my memory of this book when I read it years and years ago was all about the story from the Great Depression. Those of you that have read the story, you'll see it's fascinating that Holmes points out that most of us think, in fact, he was writing this, several decades ago, so it was a lot closer to the Great Depression of the 1930s. But what he does is he looks at why people were fired from their jobs. And we all assumed that they were fired because the companies could no longer afford to hire them. But the vast majority of people that lost their jobs during the Great Depression was because their attitude was so bad. Because they were afraid that they would lose their jobs, because they were anxious when they read the newspapers, because that's all they had back then, and saw that the stock market had crashed and that their savings and everything was lost. People went bananas. They just had terrible attitudes, and they came to work with those attitudes. And their employers said, "This isn't working. You got to go," and they let them go. And which fit perfectly in the scenario that all is lost. We're in a depression. It fit perfectly. Anyone that accepted that concept and lived from that concept got that result. And all thought it was because, of what had happened in the Hoover administration. and, you know, all the mistakes that were made, and the business mistakes, and all, you know, they go on and on about all this outside stuff, thinking that's what it was. But it wasn't. It was believing those things, and then living your life with those limiting beliefs, those destructive beliefs, and then having the people around you say, we don't want you here, go. That's why people lost their jobs. The vast majority of people, not everybody, but the vast majority of people lost their jobs for that reason. Which goes back to the idea that your personality is dictating quite a bit of how your life is going. So this is advice to all of us to pay attention to how our outer face into the world looks and how people are perceiving that. Not that we're trying to succumb to the beliefs of other people, but are we satisfied with the way we're presenting ourselves in the world to do what is ours to do and to be who we've come here to be? Are we supporting ourselves, or are we doing exactly the opposite and creating obstacles for ourselves? Because people don't want to be around us. I look around this room, and I don't see anybody that people don't want to be around. So I don't think that's the issue. But we know of people like that, don't we? Yeah. They get in their own way. They get in their own way. So that's the point I think he's making in this whole thing on personality, is that it has a direct impact on how our life unfolds. Okay. Chapter 8, Finding Life's Riches. In this chapter, he starts, spirit is always becoming something in your experience, and that something is decided by you. Isn't that great? Spirit is always becoming something in your experience, and that something is decided by you. That's genius. I mean, that just sums up our philosophy in one simple statement. And you can't stop spirit from becoming something. What we can do, though, is pay attention to our thoughts and how those thoughts and the beliefs that we have are impacting our world. The thing about thoughts, though, and beliefs is that they're invisible. And you can't go get a full list somewhere. You can't go to the library, get online, and get a full list of what you believe. So it's a lot to manage. And the advice that I've given people my entire time in ministry is the only way to do that is when some condition in your life isn't working for you, it isn't pleasing you, it isn't taking you to the place that you'd like to be. What is it that you believe that causes that condition to be in your life? What is it? And if you can't figure it out, make something up. And then when you make up something that said, or you realize that something in your thinking, in your limited thinking and beliefs, is actually the source point of this thing that's happening in your life, change it. Do it the exact opposite. Believe the exact opposite. I know that some of you that do a lot of classes with me get tired of hearing this, but my favorite example, the easiest example I know, is a child that grows in a house where the parents argue. Child thinks, well, that's what a relationship's about. And inevitably will go into a relationship when they're old enough to do that. And there will be arguing. And that will be absolutely normal to them. It's very dysfunctional. It's very painful. It uses a lot of energy in a non-creative, non-productive way. But it's the way it is. Because that's what I grew up in. How else could it be? And unconsciously, that person has picked someone that will argue with them, even though it doesn't look that way in the beginning. So then they say, you know, I'm tired of this. I watched my parents do this for 25 years. I don't want to do this anymore. You're out of here, or I'm out of here. And anyway, however, that relationship ends. And it was that person's fault that they did all that. And what do? They go out and get in another relationship with a really nice person. But within 3 months, they're arguing. And they're wondering, does this person have some communication going on with my ex? Because it's the same kind of stuff. But the truth is that the common denominator, the thread that runs through both relationships, is you. It's you. So the fact that it's happening again isn't about the other person. It's about you, about the belief that you have, watching your parents, that that people argue, and that's the nature of relationships. So maybe I should go in a convent. Maybe I should give up this idea that I should be with someone. Well, that's not the effective answer. The effective answer is to let go of the belief that you have to be with somebody that argues. You have to be with somebody that is contentious, that you have to be contentious in a relationship, because you don't. You don't. How long have Barbara and I been together? Is it almost 30 years or is it over 30 years?
Over 30, I think.
Yeah, so it is. It's 32 years. I can remember raising my voice maybe twice because I don't want that. Did my parents argue? You bet they did. Did my first wife argue with me? Well, my first wife made my mother look like an amateur.
You did good, huh?
I decided I didn't want that in my life. I'm quite happy with that decision. Have Barbara and I had disagreements? Absolutely, but we talk them through. Because I want her to be happy, I want to be happy. I can't make her happy, but for me to do something that would set up either of us being unhappy, well, it makes no sense to me. We had this thing that we used to do. I came home once and she was not in a great mood. And I said something that kind of set her off. She didn't scream or anything, but I could tell she was not happy. And I said, hey, I'll be back. And I left, and I went and got in my car. And we lived out in Fairview at the time, and it was a big drive. It was over a mile to go around the block. But I did. I got my car, drove around the block. I pulled up in the front yard. I came to the front door and said, honey, I'm home. And she knew exactly what was going on. And we started over. And it was gone. Just whatever was there was gone because it didn't need to be. We can do those kind of things to make a relationship work. So we're constantly creating something. Something. You have thought. Thank you.
What is the difference between arguing and having a discussion?
I would say respect. I think that if the disagreement, and people disagree, we're human beings. I talked about that, how we come from different places, have different relationships, have different experiences all through our lives. Why would we agree on everything? But if there's a disagreement, that's fine, talk it out. Talk it out with not with the idea that you're trying to convince them to be different, but that you share your opinion, which is perfectly fine. It's even better if you can substantiate your opinion. But that's only in certain circumstances where that even applies. But when it becomes a disrespectful interaction, when what you're saying is BS, that's what someone's saying to you, or you're saying it to someone else, the respect is gone. The idea of a meaningful interaction of disagreeing is gone. And at the end of those kinds of experiences, I've often learned something because I was open to hearing what that other person had to say in a respectful way. I'm listening. It's not one of two things will happen when two people come together and they have different opinions on something. For me, in that situation, I am either going to change my opinion, moving more toward their opinion, if I believe that and that works for me, or it's going to strengthen my resolve that what I believe is right. But that doesn't mean that I disrespect anybody for having a difference of opinion. Everybody's entitled to have their opinion. Beyond this point of abusiveness or lack of respect. And I think that it works that way. I don't know that we all should. I think it's weird if we all agree on everything. How does that work? I have no idea. So, and if we talk long enough here, we'd all find ways that we disagree. And that would not be a problem. It's quite all right. The science of mind is not here to teach you what to think. It's here to help you learn how to think so that you can live a meaningful, productive life. Does that work?
Well, I go to the next step, and that is that after the discussion, then comes usually, in my case, an action.
Mm-hmm.
And then the action is still my point of view, and we've had a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person is frustrated with my action.
Mm-hmm. And they're entitled.
And then what?
They get to be frustrated.
Uh-huh.
And don't get hooked by that.
Yes, I'll call you, John, when I don't. You know, I get hooked when my daughter starts
Exactly.
her thing with me. I get. and it's my
Here's
daughter,
a
I
personal
get
story.
hooked.
When Barbara's son was in high school, and we were out living in Fairview, we actually owned a single-wide mobile home out there that we eventually turned into our first center. But it was a single-wide mobile home, and it was an older one. And what we decided was that Barbara and I were gonna live up in the farmhouse, my uncle's farmhouse, and take care of that, and that would be our home. Matthew wanted some independence. He was 16 years old, and he wanted he didn't like the idea of living up at the house, and that was fine with us because there really wasn't a second bedroom, just a little farmhouse. So he was going to live in the mobile home. The thing is that I was doing my office in the mobile home too, and Matt would come in at night. He was kind of a night owl. And he would fix himself something to eat, and he would leave all the dirty dishes in the sink. And I would get there in the morning, and there'd be a bunch of dirty dishes, and he'd be off to school. So I cleaned up the dirty dishes, and I'd say, Matt, this isn't working for me. I don't want to clean up your dirty dishes. He said, okay. Next day, dirty dishes in the sink. And so he knew my feelings about it. We had an agreement that he would clean up, but that was not his habit. That was not what he was doing. So it wasn't my intention to punish him, but I came to him and I said, okay, here's what we're gonna do. If you leave dirty dishes there in the kitchen, I will clean them up. But everything I clean up, I'm packing up and taking up to the house. He started doing his dishes. You know? In fact, I remember when he was even younger than that, and we lived in Miami, that it would drive Barbara crazy that his bedroom was not clean, was not organized. It was a mess. And I said, Barbara, why are you fighting over him? It's his space. Just make sure you can close the door. And that worked for her. So just, if you're gonna have a mess, just have it in your room. Don't leave it in the living room, or the kitchen, or the dining room. What you do in your room is your business. And he kind of kept that level of disorganization until he fell in love with a girl in high school. And she insisted he not live that way if she wanted to if they were going to have a relationship. And he's pretty much a neat freak now. You know, and there's all kind of ways to work that kind of stuff out. But we don't need to burden ourselves with whether people are challenged by it. We just need to know a way to get through a situation that resolves our issue. And they're always there, one way or another. And you do it lovingly. You don't get angry. Anger doesn't help. Anger has its place, but there's always a price to pay for anger. So I don't encourage people to get angry about it. Anger is the emotion that will stop somebody cold. If I step up here and get in Vincent's face and kind of scream at him, whatever he was doing, he won't be doing it. He'll be totally caught up in what I'm saying. But then he'll think I'm some kind of jerk, which would be correct in that moment. It would seem that way. So, anger is something that you can use as a tool, but be careful with it, because there's always a price to pay. Okay, how we doing? Any other questions, comments on this? That's a good one. Fear is always becoming something in your experience, and that's something that's decided by you. Do not try by force of will to compel yourself into a belief. God, this is good. Let go of all striving. I see people doing this. I see people do it with treatment, with spiritual mind treatment. They try to force it. I just really get intense here. I can make this thing work. That's not how it works. It isn't about pushing. It isn't about hard. It isn't about effort. It has nothing to do with effort. Having what we want in our lives has to do with what you believe. And beliefs can change like that. A belief is just there because you want it there. If you don't want it anymore, you can replace it immediately. You can't eliminate it and leave a void. But if you eliminate it and add something in its place and believe the thing that you're changing it to, it will change, and then the outcome will change. It has to. Because our thoughts and our beliefs are what's impressed upon the law, which create the conditions of our lives. Period, end of story. Any thoughts on that statement? Anybody ever done that? Ever tried to force something to be so in your thinking? Oh yeah. Because someone else told you gotta believe this. Okay, I'll work at it. I'll find a way to believe this. Maybe I can talk myself into this, convince myself. I've never found that to work. It's one reason, even though there's a thing in our teaching, in Holmes' work, called argumentative treatment, I have never taught that. Because why do I want to argue with myself? I want to choose a different path without, arguing is effortful. It takes work, it takes energy to argue, even with yourself. Maybe more with yourself than other ones. I forget who it was. There's somebody in the Old Testament who was wrestling with angels. Remember that story? I don't remember who it was, but that whole thing about wrestling with angels is really about trying to effortfully move through some kind of conflict in your life. Struggling to get to a place where it's okay. The struggling path never works. It supports nothing in our lives in a meaningful way. The other thing he says right after this is, just say to yourself, this is the way such things are done. This is God's method of getting results, and I accept it. Effortless. Effortless. And I guarantee you, if you embrace this teaching, there will be times in your life when something will happen and you'll feel victimized. You'll feel done wrong. You'll feel like you got the raw end of the deal. I don't know where that came from. Yeah. Okay. So that will happen to you. What do you do with that? Do you wrestle with it? Do you struggle with it? Or do you go, oh, wait a minute. Maybe this is how I'm looking at it. Maybe this is maybe what I've been doing is going in circles or digging a hole. Maybe if I just let it be okay, maybe if I just knew that this was resolved, it would be different. And oftentimes that's all it takes. I love spiritual mind treatment and I practice it regularly. But sometimes it's just a change of perception that changes the whole matter. The story I told about the guy that used to drive me crazy? He didn't change, I did. And yet the whole thing was gone, the whole problem was over. So don't ever be necessarily looking for a specific outcome to be your resolution. Simply know it's resolved. And let whatever it takes to be resolved happen. No need to make this hard. Nothing has to be hard about this. In fact, the hardness of life is the thing that is the opposite of what we're teaching here. This should be easy. This should be just the path. Just take another step. It's okay. Take another breath. And by saying I accept it, allows it to be so. And so it is. Let's take a break. In this chapter, so here's the next quote. Do not try to, oh no, we already did that, didn't we? Okay. Just say to yourself, this is the way such things are done. We did that one too. Here we go, mental equivalent. That's what I wanted to talk about. Mental equivalent. That's a term I've never heard anywhere else but in the science of mind. I guess Holmes created this term. If somebody else knows of a book, Jackson, if you know of a book where they talk about mental equivalence, I'd love to know that, because it seems to me that Holmes came up with that. What he says that is mental equivalent is feeling that the desired good is yours now. The law manifests what we accept. So he writes in some other books quite a bit about mental equivalence. And the idea is embody the idea of the thing that you desire. Move beyond desiring it to having it in your mind. And what I teach people in treatment, which will probably come up in this class we're going to do, is words in a treatment are great. They're wonderful. But words are not the whole thing. This idea of imagining. Some people say they can't do this, but I can do it really well. If you can see it in your mind's eye, close your eyes and see the thing that you want. If you can walk around it and see it from different perceptions. If you can listen to what the people involved in this thing that you want to create are saying. If you can think about how it makes you feel in that situation of having this condition in your life. That's all mental equivalent work. That's all actually creating in mind a perfect structure of the thing that you want to have created in physical form. And I have found using that ability makes it so much more real and makes it, and what I in my personal life, what I found is that it looks a lot like what I was anticipating. Where in some cases, people treat with words and the thing shows up and they don't even recognize it. Because they didn't really have an image of it. And it's different. I've had people, my wonderful story, you're going to hear these again the next time. Somebody came to me, wanted treatment to be in a healthy relationship because their last relationship was so terrible. And so I said, great, I will see you in a healthy relationship. And they were delighted. And they came back the next week and said it didn't work. What do you mean it didn't work? Well, what happened was my ex called me. I don't want to talk to him. I want a new relationship. And I said to him, come on, that was your first step in getting the thing that you want. They were there. Make up. Let it go. Stop being in judgment of this person. Because you're carrying all that baggage into something you say you want, and it's going to have the same challenges. It was a perfect thing. This person that had not spoken to her in some time called her. If that's not a manifestation of moving in the direction toward a healthy relationship, I don't know what is. But she didn't recognize it. Because she really didn't have an image. She just knew, she really knew what she didn't want. But that doesn't get you where you want to be. So the idea of mental equivalent is actually having a sensory awareness of the condition that you want in your life. A lot of people will, when they know that they're going to get a particular kind of car, is to go into the showroom and sit in that kind of car. And even take it for a test drive. Just to get the feel of it. So that you have a mental equivalent of being in that kind of a car. And this is applicable to any situation. There's always a way to create a mental image of it and to absolutely accept that it really exists right now. When we accept it, that's the key ingredient. I accept that this is so in my life. That's what the phrase "and so it is" means. I accept it. It's real. It's so. So mental equivalence. Yes, David. Hold on.
What is the difference between mental equivalence and transcendentalism?
Well, my understanding of transcendentalism is that that's the process of transcending the limitations of physical form. So mental equivalent is actually an action that moves you towards something that's going to be in physical form. So I would say that's the difference. Anybody else have a thought, question, comment? Y'all are particularly quiet tonight. That's okay, I can keep going. I got lots more.
Wait,
I'll go over here, okay. Thank you, baby.
it's funny, because I just had this conversation with Sylvia recently, and she was trying to explain mental equivalence to me, and it sounded totally opposite of what you just said. And because I was like, that sounds like a lot of effort. I don't think that's what I'm supposed to be doing, And but the way I've been practicing it and the verbiage I've been using is embodying it to where you're feeling like you
kind of
have
the same
it right now.
Yeah.
And and I've just discovered that trying to imagine being a millionaire or something just for the fun of it, because the lotto was like, $432 billion or whatever it is. And trying to imagine that was really hard for me because most of the stories I knew about rich people were assholes, excuse my French. And, and it's like, I don't want to be like that. So what do I see different, about having a lot of money to where it's not going to make me turn the opposite of who I am?
That will keep you from ever having that experience, if that's what you think people are, because it's inconsistent.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
and that's why, I've been like saying, okay, wait a minute, there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of money and they are not. They're giving money away. And so I thought about what I want to do with money, and I realized, if I had that $432 million, I'd spend maybe $5 million max on myself with a new house and and things. And then the rest of it would be given away. I would have so much fun being a secret angel, or making other people's dreams coming true, or building other businesses like this to get children into this kind of thinking and stuff early, and then I was like, oh, that would be a lot of fun. So yes, and so I'm now getting a mental equivalent for abundance, which I'm very grateful for.
Good for you. Good for you. That's great. That's wonderful.
I got another question.
Dave's got a question.
What is the difference between mental equivalent and visioning?
The visioning process that we embrace in Science of Mind is a matter of asking certain questions and listening internally for a response, for what bubbles up out of it. Mental equivalence is a very intentional thing. It's like you already know what you want. Now you're giving form to it. You're seeing it clearly. You're able to taste it and touch it and smell it. I had the idea as we were listening to Pegatha's story of somebody saying, I want to go to Maui. Great. What happens on Maui? I don't know. There's a beach. Maybe learn more about what goes on in Maui. Maybe watch some videos of some, what do they call the big dinners they do there? Luau. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And find out what else is going on there and be there in those pictures, in those videos. See yourself experiencing that. Smell the food. Whatever. There are all kinds of ways. Use all of your senses to create a mental equivalent. It is equal in your mental state to the thing that you are creating in form through the law. And the more information you give that's not, I don't want to misstate here, but when you give a stronger sense of certainty around something because you have, like you've already experienced it in mind, you're giving the law a lot to work with without dictating to the law how that's going to look. Yeah. Okay, this is good. All right, let's see what else we got to say here. As a result of social, physical, financial, and spiritual well-being, happiness is assured.
Is that the right page?
That's page 59.
Oh, I think I've just got one out of place there. Let's move on. Don't expect to get anything without paying the right price. This is good stuff. Don't expect to get anything without paying the right price. That price in the objective world usually consists of good work, systematic study, personal development, or any concrete action that represents your part of the transaction. Now, this is Holmes's take on it. Is it absolutely true for everyone that the price you pay is good work, systematic study, personal development? Maybe it is. I think good work has to always be part of it. You've got to be productive in life somehow. You've got to, I think what he's saying is everything is a transaction, it's an exchange. It's an energetic exchange. So what are you bringing? And what he's saying there is the action of saying, I don't want to do anything, I just want to have this in my life. I don't want to actually participate in creating it, I just want it to show up. It's maybe not the clearest way to get where you want to go. But maybe there's something else that you have to do, and I believe we're gonna see a quote in here before the night's over, about the idea that it's consciousness and action. Consciousness and action. Oh, we have a thought in the back. Can we get the mic?
I think of, is it on?
Yes.
I think of those things as what we do, or one of the things that those things can do, allows us to allow more fully. If I've studied well, if I've become competent, if I have an experience, then I can relax around the idea of receiving it. If I can relax around the idea of receiving it, I can have it without it.
I like that. That's really well said.
But I think that's just, yeah, that's what it does.
One of my favorite stories that will apply to this kind of thing was with my Native American teacher, Will Rockinger. We sat in circle with Will on Thursday nights for several years. And at one point, it was fall and was working toward winter. And he told the circle that it was his intention to have a better wood-burning stove in the room where we met. It was a good-sized room, and there was a stove in the corner, but there was kind of a rinky-dink stove. And he had a particular one he wanted. He wanted a Mama Bear, which is a particular kind of wood stove, and that's what he wanted. So Barbara and I decided that we were going to find his Mama Bear. And she went on a quest. I think it was back when that little rag called the Iwana was out. And it took several weeks, but she found somebody who had a Mama Bear. She found a couple. One of them was in such bad shape we couldn't use it. But the other one was at least enough to where doing some minor things to it would really make it presentable for Rocky Bear. We were all excited, but we had to go find it, and we had to negotiate the price and the repairs and getting it ready, and we had to wait for all that to happen. Meanwhile, Rocky Bear's home going, "Where's my Mama Bear?" And he's, after a few weeks of waiting and knowing nothing, and we were going to surprise him, so we didn't tell him anything. The day that we picked it up out in Canton and carried it up to the base of Mount Mitchell where his lodge was, the day we picked it up to take it up there, he said, "I got to do something." So he went down to the Burnsville newspaper and put an ad in saying he was looking for a Mama Bear, you know, and that he would pay for whatever, you know, he put in the ad. But he took the action of putting it in the paper that day. Now you say, well, that's just a coincidence because you had planned on getting it as soon as it was available. Or maybe Rockinger had to take some action to make the thing come. He had to add to the transaction. He didn't end up having to pay for it, but he had to do the thing on his end that told him that he was acting on that intention. And when he did, that afternoon, up we pull up in Barbara's little Toyota truck with a Mama Bear. And he told us that story. And it all just fit together so beautifully. So could it be that it really is about the action we take that creates the outcomes in our lives? No matter what else is going on out there in the world. You know? Because who knows? Had it not been ready that day, or had the guy that was working on it done something that actually broke it, anything of which could have happened, and many other things could have happened, that would have restricted it from being ready when it was, or being available at all, didn't happen. It all fell in place so that once he took his action, the outcome provided that into his life.
It reminds me of that spiritual sign in Las Vegas. You have to show up to win.
There you go. You have to show up to win. All right. All right, let's see what we got. So that's that. I think there's some other points he makes. Infinite mind can see and know all that is underneath, above, around, past, present, and future, all of which is entirely shut off from your limited vision. So we are, I don't believe that we are connected to infinite mind. I believe that the mind that we have exists within the mind of God, the infinite mind of God. And that mind knows everything. Time is not a factor. Outcome is easily seen and known. Everything is falling together in perfect order according to the consciousness of each being on planet Earth and all the other beings in all of creation, wherever they might be. It's us that are the only ones that can turn that off. But my guess is that Spirit knows all that too. That we're going to turn it off, that we're going to say something or think something or do something that's going to block the good that we say we want from coming to us. Because how else could it get blocked? Who else could block it? There's nobody else. The law won't block it. The law is the creative force of the universe, but it only acts when we give it something to act on, which we're doing all the time. By our limited vision. Good stuff. Faith and works guarantee success. By faith, he's not saying faith in God. In fact, what the little phrase in Science of Mind often is don't have faith in God, have the faith of God. So that you can be that infinite mind and know the full potential of your being. Do any of us know the full potential of our being? I don't think so. I think that we approach it, we move toward it, but I think that we're all still working from that finite awareness and doing the best we can with it. But he says that faith of knowing and works guarantee success. We hear of stories of the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree and everything he needs coming to him. That's a lovely story. Probably happened. I don't know. But the idea is that it's our job not only to know, but it's our job to act on what we know. That everything we do in alignment with our actions that match our belief that something is so adds to its structure, adds to its outcome. I think our actions are impressed upon the law as much as our words are. And that it's important to have actions to move us in the direction we want to go. That verifies that what we say we want, we're willing to have. We had a teacher that used to come and see us from Florida or Georgia, wherever he lived at the time. His name was Willard Fuller. And I heard him ask somebody, someone said to him, I really want to go to Europe. And he said, no, you don't. Well, yeah, I do. I really want to go to Europe. No, if you wanted to go to Europe, you'd already be on the road. You'd already be working your way to the coast. Yeah, but I don't have enough money. He said, it doesn't matter. You'd be going to the coast to find some vessel that's going to Europe that you could work on or that you could make some kind of trade on. You'd be doing something to make that happen. So you're not convincing me at all that you want to go to Europe because you're not doing anything. And I believe that that's the idea of faith and works, actually taking us to a place. And it isn't that the works do it alone. The works will not do it alone. If you have a limited belief that it's not going to work out, but you're getting up every morning and working on it, still with that belief that it's not going to happen, the not happening will direct that. But if you do believe it's going to happen, with everything in you, you're convinced, absolutely, you accept that it's going to happen, and you act accordingly, that's the outcome that you will create. We have a question or a thought in the back of the room.
I was wondering if, because to me it seems like just from what you're saying, that as opposed to the word faith, use the word knowing. So
Oh, you could do that, sure. This was a Holmes word.
okay, but
Yeah,
I'm
don't-
just from what you're describing, it sounds like to me it seems more like knowing is something. Faith is
Well,
abstract.
faith is kind of an archaic word these days.
Yeah.
So that's why I talked about the faith of God, which is a knowingness.
Okay.
You know, the divine doesn't have to have faith in anything.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, different words, just about different times. Yes?
So the faith is not in God, but faith is not in God, but faith in ourselves and accomplishing. Is that?
No, faith of God means having a faith that it's so.
Okay.
Yeah, just not even directing it on the outcome of any one or any group, it doesn't matter. It's just knowing that it's so.
Okay.
Yeah, is what the faith I believe he's talking about there. Okay, growth is not instantaneous. Ooh. It is gradual. Results do not often come immediately. And in all cases, the desired results come to pass through normal human agencies. This on the surface may sound like a limiting thought. Wouldn't it be nice if we could simply know that something is so, open our eyes and there it was? Has anyone had that happen? Can you think of a time where that's happened?
No.
The thing is that being in the physical universe is a little more arduous, a little more clunky. Just by its nature, its form, where energy moves so quickly, and thoughts are energy, and they don't, when a thought goes into the law, it's impressed upon the law, that clunkiness starts. It's gotta come. Now, I absolutely believe that that something can be known in mind and show up quickly enough that it must have required a series of events to start way before you ever did the treatment, before you ever knew that it was so. That, I have no trouble believing that, because as much as treatment is non-local, it is also not held to the confines of time. So can something suddenly show up? Sure, I know of it happening. And in fact, I've had it happen to me, where I knew something was going to be, like I was going to get some money, go to the mailbox, pull out the mail, there's an envelope, there's money in it. Same day. That's pretty instantaneous, but again, it didn't get mailed that day, the check didn't get written that day. It happened earlier. So could that happen? Yes, but still the clunkiness of form and time would cause it not to instantly show up in our presence. It just was on a timeline that was different than starting when the knowing was done. In nearly all cases, the desired results come to pass through normal human agencies. I find this, that people ask for treatment, they ask for assistance in knowing that it's something is so, and then the thing happens. And it happens in such an easily logical way, they go, I had nothing to do with the treatment, that's just what happened. You know, that's the way it would have happened. That's the way all things happen. It isn't all like this ooh, magic. You know, sometimes it's somebody talked to somebody and they did something and this is how it resulted and it worked and lined up with what I was calling a deformity. Well, that's how it works. So don't discount it because you can understand it retroactively. If you can understand how it happened, doesn't take away from the fact that it happened through your clarity. And it could not have happened without your clarity of knowing, your acceptance, your embodying of it. Any thoughts on this one? Okay. Chapter 9, moving right along, and as usual, I'm going to rush now. There's something within us all of which constantly pushes us forward, demanding continued progress. I thought about this one for a while. I thought about the idea of being pushed forward. There's a phrase in science of mind that says we are either pushed by pain or pulled by vision. Well, there's something within us that pushes us with pain. Now, that's not probably the only way we can be pushed. We can receive encouragement. We can work things out in our mind in a way that suddenly now we can see moving forward with it. There's all kinds of ways to do it. But what he's saying here is that's part of life. That life pushes us to be more of who we are meant to be. Life generally does that. And I would say the pain part of it is when life is pushing us with challenges so that we will see who we are, so that we will get that we are bigger than this problem that we are facing, that this thing that has come up, oh, it's so terrible. No, it's asking you to be bigger than the problem. And when we take that attitude with it, suddenly it's not so big. I have had in my life things that looked like a 10-foot high rock wall as far in both directions as I can possibly see, and there's no way to get through there. But when I realize that I'm bigger, I'm more powerful than that thing that's before me, it crumbles like dust. It goes away. A phone call comes and says, well, we've changed our mind. we're gonna go ahead and do the thing that we had said we weren't gonna do. Whatever it is, however it works, that when we get clear about who we are, the conditions change. Always. I remember a woman coming to me once, talking about how much she hated her supervisor. And I said, well, as long as you hate them, they're gonna be there, making you wrong, telling you you're not good enough, doing all the things that push all your buttons. How about you let go of all that? How about you be okay with him being your supervisor? And one thing's gonna happen, one of two things will happen. Either they will align with you and be respectful to you, or they will leave, or you will leave. Well, something's gonna move, something's gonna change this. And so we treated it, knowing that it was all worked out and it was all fine. And the woman came in 2 days later and said, my boss quit. I think I told that before, and someone in this room said, I wish I had known that. Well, but that wasn't the only possibility. You gotta be open to the possibility that you're gonna leave and go somewhere else. Or the possibility that suddenly this person that has been a pain in your butt is now gonna be someone who can be respectful with you, and you can respect them. Those things happen. And there's probably dozens of other ways it could have worked out. But the idea is you change what you're believing and experiencing, and knowing the perfection of all of it, and it has to change. You have a physical body, a complex emotional nature, and an intellect that react upon each other so that you have a triple set of capacities to be utilized in the process of advancement. That's kind of a wordy thing, but the point is that he's saying use your body, use your emotions, by controlling your emotions and having your emotions light enough that you are open to receiving the good that you're calling into your life, and that you have an intellect, that you understand how mind works, and you use that. So you use your body, you use your feelings, you use your mind, and those are three specific components that you can use to move your life forward. Don't leave any one of them out, they're all three important. When you think well of someone, and especially when you express that approval, you immediately set a standard to which that person tries to measure up. But don't try to fake that. Don't try to tell someone that you really like them and compliment them when you think they're a jerk. You gotta really believe what you're saying. If you don't, then that's called covert aggression. It's called covert aggression. It means that you're hiding your aggressive tendencies toward this person. So basically you're lying. So this isn't about suck up to people to get what you want. It's really about finding the good in them. Everybody's got it. Everybody's got good in them. Finding it and acknowledging it. And what you do with that, you cause those barriers between you and them to come down so that you can see who they are and they can see who you are. That's a very powerful way to live our lives, and it really makes a difference. And people are more amenable to working with you if you like them and they like you. When you are free from the negation of emotional conflict, the mind becomes a clear, pure channel through which God wisdom flows, and there it is created for you the good you desire. So, and there's not enough time to talk about all the value of keeping your emotional state light, of how important that is not to spend your life in anger or fear or frustration or anything that's heavy. That's not a created posture. We all want our lives to work, and for our lives to work, we have to lighten up and remember that. And when we find ourselves kind of dug in this, I'm having a horrible day, I feel terrible, I'm arguing with everybody, I'm just generally upset, that's not a day you're going to create anything you want. All you're going to do is create more of that. Okay. Oh yeah, this is great. Especially since we'll be going into our treatment class next. Prayer is the contact of man's mind with God's mind in a way that shall result in bringing to pass the desired good. Prayer is the contact of man's mind with God's mind. Well, I don't believe that they're separate. I know he said it this way, but to me, it's the same mind. There's not two minds that come together, that unify. It's one mind. The thing is that it is in man's mind, or human mind thinking, we have to know who we are. that's the unifying factor, is knowing that that mind is our mind. And when we know that God's mind is my mind, when we live from that knowing, then we have that outcome. We have the desired result. And this is something I use in my treatments all the time. I say, my word is God's word. My word is God's word. I declare my word. What I say is so, is God saying it's so. And when I do that, I'm clear enough to know that it's showing up. Now, to give you a different perspective on this quote from Holmes, I have another quote. It goes like this. Fear and worry are the contact of man's mind with God's mind in a way that shall result in bringing to pass an undesired outcome. It's the same thing, right? It's just the other side of the coin.
Showing the color.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So when you're afraid and when you're worrying, you're giving energy to the thing you don't want. So you're creating it because the object of your attention is the thing you don't want. So that's what you're creating. The saying I don't want means nothing to spiritual law. It means nothing to say I don't want this. To be afraid of it, to worry about it, though, is like wearing a neon sign. Hit me. You know? Same rule, same law, same spiritual law, just what's your focus? Our prayer is answered according to your faith, be it unto you, says Yeshua ben Yosef. Anybody know who Yeshua ben Yosef was?
Jesus.
Yeah. He's that guy from Galilee. From Nazareth. He was from Nazareth. That was Jesus' real name. According to your faith, be it unto you. In other words, what you believe is so is what you're going to experience. And if Yeshua said that, I guess it's so. All right. Chapter 10, our last chapter. Okay, here we go. One of the God qualities you inherit is the creative nature of your thought. So, the idea that we have God qualities, we have attributes, is important to understand that every thought exists in the mind of God, is impressed upon the law, and creates into form. Well, you can say, well, not all my thoughts create into form. That's true. That's true because you had another thought after you had that thought. And it's your most recent thought that's actually in the creative flow. So, just pay attention to what you're thinking, and you get the result that you want. Because you're a part of the infinite oneness, you can declare your perfect physical condition and it will manifest. I love that. And I'm watching Barbara do that right now. You know, with her physical situation, she's improving all the time. Is it happening immediately? No. Wouldn't it be nice if it would? Boom, the tumor just gone. But it's getting smaller, it's getting smaller. When you can have a conversation with an oncologist about total remission, you're obviously moving in a direction you want to move. All right. Whatever you believingly declare into mind and on which you act accordingly is manifest in your affairs. And it's about believing it. Declaration is just one of the words we use to describe this action of mind. And it's not my favorite one. Actually, realizing is my favorite one. Whatever you realize into mind, and on which you act accordingly is manifest in your affairs. So you still got that action required. Believe it, declare it, and act on it. And if you do, if you act, and that's where that acting comes in so clearly. If you act according to what you say you believe, then you're creating something that's congruent and can move forward. Many people say they believe something, and then they act differently. They act according to the condition that they wish wasn't there. And when they do, they're giving power to that condition. And that's more powerful than saying, I declare that this is so. It really is. Sometimes you need an entirely new idea. Oh yeah, this is a good one. Not knowing what it ought to be. Claiming an idea even when you do not know what it ought to be is just as specific as claiming a quick shipment, a position, a house, or anything else. This is great. When you don't know what to do, when you need a new thought, Actually, that's the name of our movement, New Thought. When you need a new thought, claim that you have it. Know that you have it. But I don't. Well, then you're the one that's blocking it. You may not, at that moment, you may not have access to it, but you have access to everything in the mind of God. And the only thing that can block you is you. So if you get out of the way and know that you have access to the thing that is what you are to know, it'll show up. It'll show up in a dream, it'll show up in a conversation, it'll show up in a TV commercial. It'll show up anywhere, but it'll show up if you claim it's so. Even an idea that you don't know what it is. That's phenomenal. Yeah. And this is something that I thought was worth reading, and it's just too long to put up on the screen, but it won't take long, and I think it's important. This experience of accepting an idea when you have no information whatsoever as to what it ought to be is one of the most satisfying you can ever have. Assure yourself over and over that your prayer is fulfilled. Don't worry if days and weeks go by without there seeming to be any response. You may be sure that the right developments are taking place. Your affairs are rightly being attended to. Steps are in progress to bring your new idea to you, together with the necessary knowledge and plans for its complete fulfillment. Be still and wait. Believe. Accept. Then someday, all of a sudden, perhaps when your mind is busy with some entirely different, with something entirely different, even some trivial little matter, there will be a flash of inspiration, and you will know that the idea has come. Isn't that great?
Yes.
But you've got to be open to it. And something that people do that is just flat wrong is they go, is it here yet? No, it's not here. Is it here yet? No, it's not here yet. Don't do that. Know that it's there. And let it show up. Open it. Welcome it. Be ready. Have that wonderful surprise party of its arrival. Let it be. The details will come. As you grow in spiritual awareness, which is everyone's goal, you come to an intelligent understanding of spiritual law and how to use it. And through the creative action of your thought as prayer, you will realize and experience your every good desire. That's the close of this book. Right there is what you need to know, is that this is that process of growing into. And many of you are well on this path, but we're all on the path and we're all still learning. And by doing that, we can experience the best of our lives with these, the basic ideas of science and mind. Thank you for a wonderful 4 weeks of study. Everyone admire the beautiful dahlias at the front of the room. Thank you, David Mark, for bringing us flowers. I know it's Barbara, but pretending. So if you would take out what you're going to give to the center. And I come to this moment in gratitude. Gratitude for the honor of teaching these concepts to people, showing them, sharing them, and most of all, living them. I am so grateful that people come into this room to share this time. I'm grateful to people who turn the class on online and experience these ideas and use them to craft a magnificent life, a wonderful life. And I know that we are on that path of awakening, that we are doing our due diligence to remember who we are and to live from that understanding in everything that we think, say, and do. And as we pass these baskets in silence, I know that this time together has been well used, and this money that comes to the center is a blessing for the center and for each one who gives. And I let that be so right here, right now, and always, with gratitude and love. And so it is.
And so it is.
So I know these gifts are blessed. I know this center is blessed. I know this class is blessed. And as we now leave this place, I know we do so safely. We find our way home. We return to the center just the right time for the next episode of finding our place on this wonderful path of awakening, this spiritual journey. And all is well, because all is God. That's the way it is now and the way it shall forever be. And again, in gratitude and love, I simply let this be so. As together we say.
And so it is.
Thank you, everyone.